Welcome to this first episode of my Wheel of Time reread on Reading the Pattern. We'll be talking about The Eye of the World, Prologue through Chapter 4, in which we start braiding our hair and dunking on Senbui. If you're new to the channel and haven't already watched my video introducing the series, you can check it out here. But basically, it's like CliffNotes. I'll be summarizing the chapters and then breaking down the themes, the characters, fun bits of foreshadowing, etc.
This video may include spoilers for all Wheel of Time books. If you have not finished reading the series and do not want to be massively spoiled, stop here or proceed at your own risk. We start our epic tale at the end of the Second Age, otherwise known as the Age of Legends. The prologue begins in the palace of Luz Theron Telamon. As this was prior to the breaking of the world, it would not appear anywhere on our map of the world in the Third Age. By the end of the prologue, Luz Theron has traveled to the location that will become Dragonmount. From there, we jump ahead thousands of years to late spring of the year 998 NE in the village of Emmons Field in the Two Rivers, where all of the main characters of this book are converging. Let's review the notebook of our favorite Ogier to remind ourselves what happened in these chapters. The palace of Luz Theron Telamon has been all but destroyed, and the dead lay everywhere, but Luz Theron does not seem to notice or remember what has just happened.
A man appears out of the air, naming himself Elan Morin Tedronai, and performs a kind of healing that restores some clarity to Luz Theron, along with excruciating pain as he realizes that his wife Ilyena is dead. Elan Morin tries to convince Luz Theron to serve him and the Great Lord of the Dark, who can bring Ilyena back to life, but Luz Theron is not having it. Elan Morin forces him to remember Luz Theron's attack on Shaitan and the Dark One's counterstroke. The 100 companions who joined him in the attack are now destroying the world, along with more and more men.
Finally, Luz Theron realizes that it was he, in his madness, who killed everyone he had ever loved, including his wife and children.
In desperate misery, he embraces the true source, the tainted Saidin, and travels to a remote place. He draws on the One Power so deeply that he pulls a blazing bolt of light from the sky through himself and into the earth.
Luz Theron is gone, and in his place, an enormous mountain of lava looming over a new island splitting the river.
Elan Morin again appears with the words, "You cannot escape so easily, dragon. It is not done between us. It will not be done until the end of time." Tam al'Thor and his son Rand travel the quarry road on their way to Emmons Field to bring apple brandy and cider for Beltane, the spring festival. Harsh winter weather lingers, although it should be late spring. Rand sees a black-cloaked figure on horseback that gives him an ominous feeling, but when Tam looks, it is gone. They arrive in the village to find preparations for festival amidst worried talk about the persistent winter. At the Winespring Inn, they meet Bran al'Vere, the mayor and innkeeper, and Senbui, a crotchety old member of the village council, who is worked up about the wisdom, Nynaeve Almira, because she is A, too young, and B, not saying when the winter will end. Rand's troublemaking friend, Matrim Mat Cawthon, calls him away, and Rand learns that Mat too saw the disappearing man on horseback. But the boys lose that train of thought in their excitement over the various strangers who are arriving in the village. Rand and Mat unload the barrels into the inn, and Mat tries to avoid the village council because one of its members, Harald Luhan the blacksmith, is angry with him for his latest prank. Their younger friend Etwin catches up with them and tells them about two of the strangers in the village. A highborn lady named Moiraine, and Lan, a fighter in service to her. Outside the inn, the boys notice a raven staring at them before Moiraine approaches and makes introductions. She provides each boy with a coin in exchange for their agreeing to assist her at need. The boys eagerly accept the tokens, and Rand notices that while Eowyn was given a silver penny, he and Mat were both given larger silver coins, and they decide not to spend them, although they are not sure why. The expected peddler, named Padan Fain, finally arrives and has news to give. Rand and Mat's friend, Perrin Ibarra, the blacksmith's apprentice, joins them in the crowd. Fain tells them that there have been troubles and harsh winter everywhere, as well as war in Gildan, caused by a man who can channel the One Power, and who claims to be the Dragon Reborn, and the Aes Sedai who have moved to stop him. Everyone freaks out about this, so the mayor pulls Padan Fain in to speak with the village council privately. While the three boys discuss the news, the wisdom, Nynaeve, approaches to scold, closely followed by the innkeeper's daughter, Egwene al'Vere, who has eyes for Rand. Egwene reveals that she has begun braiding her hair, a sign that the women's circle has deemed her old enough to marry. Despite this, Egwene thinks she may never marry, as she is now Nynaeve's apprentice and plans to become a wisdom outside of the Two Rivers. And Rand does not react well to this. Perrin reveals that he too saw the rider and was given a coin from Moiraine.
Rand and his friends meet the unexpected white-haired gleeman named Tom Merrilin.
He too has knowledge of the outside world, but appears to be more interested in recruiting the young Emmonsfielders to help him with his act and doing some advertising for the onlookers. But he stops short after meeting Moiraine and beats a retreat to the inn after Nynaeve and the village council return from their meeting with Padon Fain. Tam tells the boys a watch will be arranged for the Two Rivers borders, and all three young men want to join. The three also agree to try to find others to support their story about the Black Rider and to go to the mayor with it the next day. Rand leaves with his father to go back to their farm for the night. On the way, Tam reveals that he already knows Perrin and two other boys also saw the rider, and Rand feels enormous relief just to be believed.
Let's take a look at all the fascinating details and hints of what is to come in Robert Jordan's master plan.
One thing that truly sets this epic series apart is the extent to which Robert Jordan planned his entire story from the very beginning. His work is an absolute masterclass in foreshadowing, and in these foretelling sections of my videos, I'm going to be pointing out some of the fascinating bits that you can only pull out in hindsight. In the prologue, as Elan Morin, better known as Ishamael, is able to give Luz Theron some clarity, this is a clear hint that madness caused by the taint can in fact be healed. Throughout much of the series, this threat of the madness caused by the Dark One's taint on the male half of the True Source will be paramount. It is a constant worry for Rand, even after he manages to cleanse Saidin. And it is a constant challenge to Nynaeve, who believes that she should be able to heal anything. And in time, she does rediscover how to heal this particular form of madness. We get a much more subtle hint that Ishamael is using a different power than Luz Theron when he uses it and, quote, the light dimmed, as if a shadow had been laid across the sun. We will come to know that this is the true power, which is drawn directly from the Dark One. Also in the prologue, we see a forerunner of this obsessive red line that Rand draws for himself against killing women. Here it seems directly connected to the extreme grief that Luz Theron has over killing Ilyena, an even stronger reaction than the one he has to realizing he's killed his own children.
In the present timeline, we do get one hint of Rand's ability to channel through his use of the flame and the void. Although this technique is also used by men who do not have access to the one power, such as Tam and Lan, for Rand we will see that it is integral to his learning to control Saidin. From Moiraine, the comment, "Men wear many names, many faces, different faces, but always the same man," is a nice little clue that Rand is Luz Theron reborn. We also get the seemingly offhand comment from Tom that Rand is, quote, as tall as an Aielman. And there is good reason for this, as we eventually learn that Rand's biological father was an Aielman. As for Mat, who says, quote, "battles interest me," this of course foreshadows his highly unusual path to becoming a great battle commander. We get a nice little suggestion about the danger of Padon Fain, again from Tom Merrilin, who sums him up as, quote, more raven than man. Finally, we are treated to a notable meeting between two unlikely and eventual lovers, Tom and Moiraine. In the midst of their subtle warnings to each other and all the hints that they each know exactly who the other is, Tom says, quote, "I trust you will like my stories as well, Moiraine." Let's discuss the central themes and focal points that these chapters are woven around.
This first set of chapters in The Eye of the World focuses on the contrast of the strange with the familiar. Although the prologue is set apart in time and space from the remaining 4 chapters, even here we see that Luz Theron's madness at first causes him to ignore the strange warping of his familiar surroundings in his own palace and instead see only what he has always seen, until he is finally forced to confront what he has wrought. Later, his destruction takes what is a calm, simple landscape of a field and river and violently transforms it into the strange and distinctive formation that we will come to know as Dragonmount and the island of Tar Valon. In Emmons Field, we are introduced to the isolated and rural land of the Two Rivers, which is filled with any number of comforting and familiar tropes. Small town gossip, cranky neighbors, troublemakers, anticipation for a coming festival, and of course, a teenage crush. Two Rivers folk themselves immediately feel well known to us. Quickly we can take in their hardiness, their resilience, their no-nonsense stubbornness and frankness. But into the midst of this sleepy village come at once more strangers than they have seen in an entire generation. The peddler, the gleeman, and most especially the two strangers, who we will discover to be an Aes Sedai and her warder, shake them all out of the ordinary. Most effective of all is this subtle introduction of the Murderal that watches Rand and his compatriots and immediately interjects this persistent sense of dread just below the familiar surface. On a more meta level, these early chapters focus on this contrast of the strange and the familiar by making many direct allusions to a story that will be familiar to a lot of fantasy readers, The Lord of the Rings.
The early intentional similarities to the Tolkien classic will persist for much of this book, but are never clearer than they are here, in a town not unlike the Shire, a culture much like that of the Hobbits, and an evil-feeling Black Rider who is pursuing our young protagonists.
In contrast to these familiarities, though, we are given frequent tantalizing hints of the wide world beyond, its strange magic, its immense history, and so we understand that we, just like the people of Emmons Field, really don't know what's at stake yet. In fact, pretty much everything the Two Rivers people think they know about unfamiliar things, the dragon, Aes Sedai, and warders, and so on, turns out to be wrong in some way. Even here at the beginning, there's a sense that we are about to start a classic hero's journey, but that the world it will unfold in will be unlike anything we've seen before.
Let's break down the characters and their defining moments in these chapters.
For this first video, it only makes sense to start with a discussion of our three young male protagonists, the three ta'veren, Rand, Mat, and Perrin. All I can say is, once you have finished this series and come back to start at the beginning again, it is astonishing how far these three come. There are extremely dark times ahead for them, so it's not all for the good, but overall, their journeys are incredible, and the contrast between their innocence here at the beginning and their power at the end is stark. It is clear that growing up in the Two Rivers in many ways defines each of them. Their stubborn independence, distrust of outside authorities, honesty, and bravery are features that define each of them and that will stick with them throughout. And let's be honest, at this point they are all pretty immature and sheltered in a lot of ways. That will change, but for the time being, having grown up in such isolation has had its effects. Fortunately, they will prove themselves to be adaptable.
For Perrin, we see already that he is more careful than the others, thoughtful and perhaps a bit wary of his own strength. He appears earnest and practical, certainly in contrast to Mat, who we see immediately is best known for mischief, wisecracks, and pranks. Mat of the three longs most for adventure and is most keen to experience life outside of the Two Rivers. My favorite thing about Mat, however, is the contrast between what he thinks and says about himself and what he does. He always claims to want to run away from responsibility, and yet in his actions we nearly always see the opposite. We get a hint of that here at the beginning, when Mat attempts to avoid helping unload the barrels, but despite Rand letting him off freely, in the end, Mat does the work. We will see the same from him again and again over the course of the series. As for Rand, being inside his head, we understand how much home and his father mean to him. As for Egwene, clearly she unsettles him greatly. Although there is sincere affection there is no ease between them. Their communication is fraught, and the sense that they are on different paths is there from the beginning. Finally, despite his immaturity when it comes to romance, Rand actually does show himself to be unusually astute in other ways. He picks up, for example, on how unlikely it would be for all of these strangers coming to Emmons Field at once to be a coincidence. He recognizes when Tom is laughing at the boys before anyone else does. He asks pointed questions of Moiraine about why she has come, and of Tam about the choices of the village council. Our understanding of Tam as a solid, intelligent, kind, and straightforward man also tells us much about what Rand has been taught to value. We will learn a ton more about Tam in the future, but basically he is a total badass, and it is clear that Rand gets a lot of his strength from his father. Let's talk about what we need to know about the Dark One and all of his minions and followers. For this first installment, I won't yet go into much detail, as at this point much of the Dark One and those who support him remain shrouded in mystery. We do meet one of, and arguably the most important of the Forsaken, the 13 powerful channelers who are the Dark One's most essential tools. Ishamael, who was originally called Ilan Morin Tedranai, we learn is closely linked to the dragon, but not much else. The Forsaken as a whole, we learn, are supposed to be bound with the Dark One in his prison in Shaiel Ghul. We hear a brief mention of Dark Friends, which the Aes Sedai are generally suspected of being, and we see a raven, though we don't yet know it is being used as a spy for the Dark One. And of course, we see a Murderal, at a distance, with only a hint of its true nature. We will soon learn much more of those. And now, let's find a little levity amidst the darkness. Personally, I love Tam's casual dunk on Senbui. Quote, "Have you become a soothsayer then, interpreting omens?" Tam asked dryly. "Or do you listen to the wind like a wisdom? There's certainly enough of it, some originating not far from here." Knowing and loving Nynaeve as I do, I can't help but appreciate this first description of her. Quote, "Dark braid pulled over her shoulder, almost bristling with anger." What could be a more iconic description of Nynaeve? Last, and probably my favorite, is Tom Marilyn, barely containing the lulls at Perrin and Mat for thinking they are well-traveled, as he keeps tugging at his own mustaches to hide his smiles.
I really hope you enjoyed starting this reread journey of the Wheel of Time with me. Please be sure to check out my next video in the series, where I will delve into the Eye of the World, chapters 5 through 9. Please let me know in the comments if there are any favorite bits of foreshadowing or Aiel humor that I might have missed. One of the next videos I want to do will collect these kind of comments for all of my Eye of the World videos, and so you might get a shout out. And whether or not you drank too much of Tam's apple brandy for Beltane, please be sure to subscribe for more Wheel of Time content, including speculation for the Wheel of Time TV series. See you next time at Winter Night.